Economic Development Minister Maxim Reshetnikov in Dar es Salaam for a business and investment forum aimed at strengthening bilateral trade and economic ties. The event highlighted Tanzania's potential as a strategic entry point for Russian products into Africa, building on the North-South transport corridor, while providing Tanzanian goods access to the Eurasian Economic Union. Tanzanian Natural Resources and Tourism Minister Dr. Pindi Chana voiced optimism, wishing long-live Tanzania and Russia, and envisioning new heights of collaboration.
Tanzanian Foreign Minister Mahmoud Kombo and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov hold talks in Moscow. During the meeting, Kombo delivered a letter from Tanzanian President Samia Hassan addressed to the Russian President Vladimir Putin, the latest sign of strengthening ties between the two countries.
I once again thank you and His Excellency President also, together with the whole team from your side, for elevating our strategic cooperation, and that was mentioned in the President's speech when she was speaking to the world via all the diplomatic missions and international organizations in Tanzania.
Russia and Tanzania have expanded cooperation in recent years across defense, trade and energy.
I would like to express our satisfaction with cooperation between Russia and Tanzania in international organization, the United Nations first.
As African governments look to reduce their reliance on the US dollar, Tanzania is turning to its long-term ally in Russia, Vladimir Putin. Now, on Monday, Tanzania's foreign minister delivered a personal letter from President Samia Suluhu Hassan to Putin. It was handed over in Moscow during talks between Foreign Minister Mahmoud Kombo and Russia's Sergei Lavrov. Kombo said the letter reaffirmed Tanzania's intent to expand cooperation across key sectors.
I once again thank you and His Excellency President also, together with the whole team from your side, for elevating our strategic cooperation.
The Kremlin welcomed the move, pointing to closer coordination at international forums, including the United Nations.
Tanzania's deepening alliance with Russia marks a significant shift in the global geoeconomic landscape, reflecting a broader transformation underway across Africa as nations reassess trade dependencies, currency exposure, and strategic partnerships. Over the past decade, Tanzania has steadily repositioned itself as a sovereign actor intent on maximizing national interests through diversified global engagement rather than alignment with a single power bloc. The acceleration of cooperation with Russia, particularly in energy, agriculture, defense, and currency arrangements, signals a deliberate move toward reducing reliance on dollar-denominated systems and Western-centric financial architecture. At the heart of this evolving relationship lies trade settlement reform. Tanzania and Russia have expanded discussions around conducting bilateral trade in national currencies, primarily the Tanzanian shilling and the Russian ruble, while also exploring clearing mechanisms involving third-party currencies and regional payment systems. This shift is driven by pragmatic considerations rather than ideological alignment. Dollar-based trade exposes African economies to currency volatility, inflation spillovers, sanctions risk, and liquidity constraints. For Tanzania, whose economy relies heavily on imports of machinery, fertilizers, and refined petroleum products, mitigating these risks has become a policy priority. Russia, facing its own constraints within the Western financial system, has intensified engagement with non-Western partners capable of sustaining long-term trade outside dollar-clearing networks. Tanzania offers a strategic gateway to East and Southern Africa, access to Indian Ocean trade routes, and a growing domestic market with expanding infrastructure ambitions. The alignment of interests has resulted in renewed bilateral agreements covering fertilizer supply chains, energy development, mineral exploration, and agricultural technology transfer. Agriculture has emerged as a cornerstone of the partnership. Tanzania remains one of Africa's largest agricultural producers, with vast arable land and a population whose livelihoods depend on farming. Russia's role as a major exporter of fertilizers, grain, and agricultural inputs places it in a critical position within Tanzania's food security strategy. Agreements facilitating fertilizer imports under flexible payment terms have helped stabilize domestic food production costs while insulating Tanzanian farmers from global price shocks that surge following disruptions in global supply chains. Beyond fertilizers, collaboration in agricultural mechanization and processing has gained momentum. Russian firms have increased their presence in supplying tractors, irrigation systems, and storage facilities tailored to Tanzania's climatic and geographic conditions. These investments aim not only to increase yields but also to expand Tanzania's capacity for value-added agricultural exports, reducing dependence on raw commodity sales and improving trade balances. Energy cooperation represents another pillar of the alliance. Tanzania's ambitions to become a regional energy hub require diversified partnerships capable of supporting long-term infrastructure development. Russia's state-linked and private energy companies have expressed interest in upstream and downstream projects, including natural gas development, power generation, and transmission infrastructure. Tanzania's offshore gas reserves, among the largest in East Africa, present opportunities for joint development that could reshape regional energy markets. Unlike traditional extractive arrangements, Tanzanian authorities have emphasized local content requirements, skills transfer, and infrastructure co-development. This reflects lessons learned from previous resource partnerships where limited domestic value capture constrained long-term development. Russian engagement, structured through negotiated bilateral frameworks, aligns with Tanzania's insistence on state oversight and strategic control over critical assets. Defense and security cooperation, while less publicized, plays a stabilizing role in the broader relationship. Tanzania has historically maintained a non-aligned defense posture, procuring equipment and training from diverse sources. Renewed cooperation with Russia includes military training programs, maintenance support, and equipment upgrades designed to enhance Tanzania's border security, maritime patrol capabilities, and peacekeeping readiness. This approach reinforces national security autonomy without formal military alignment. Currency and payment systems sit at the center of the geoeconomic implications. The gradual move toward dollar-free trade between Tanzania and Russia reflects a wider African reassessment of exposure to U.S. monetary policy and financial enforcement mechanisms. For decades, African trade has been intermediated through the dollar, even when transactions involve non-U.S. partners. This structure has imposed transaction costs, currency mismatches, and vulnerability to external shocks. Tanzania's participation in regional financial initiatives, including the African Continental Free Trade Area payment systems and cross-border settlement platforms, complements bilateral currency experimentation. By aligning with partners willing to transact outside the dollar, Tanzania strengthens its negotiating position while contributing to the gradual emergence of multipolar trade finance. The implications extend beyond bilateral trade volumes. Dollar-free arrangements encourage local currency stability by reducing demand for foreign exchange reserves tied to trade settlement. For Tanzania, this supports macroeconomic resilience, preserves fiscal space, and enhances central bank policy flexibility. It also aligns with broader African Union objectives aimed at strengthening inter-African trade and reducing external dependency. Russia's engagement in Tanzania must also be understood within the context of Africa's evolving geopolitical leverage. African nations increasingly recognize their collective importance in global supply chains, energy markets, food security, and diplomatic forums. By engaging multiple global powers on negotiated terms, Tanzania asserts its agency and contributes to a more balanced international order. Critically, this partnership does not represent a rejection of Western engagement but a recalibration. Tanzania continues to trade with the European Union, the United States, China, and regional partners. The strategic difference lies in diversification rather than substitution. By expanding cooperation with Russia, Tanzania reduces the asymmetry that historically characterized Africa's external relations. Trade data reflects this diversification. Bilateral trade between Tanzania and Russia, while still modest compared to Tanzania's largest partners, has grown steadily, particularly in agricultural inputs, machinery, and energy-related services. Projections indicate further growth as payment mechanisms mature and logistical links improve. Port development and shipping agreements enhance Tanzania's role as a regional transit hub connecting inland African economies to global markets. The Indian Ocean dimension adds strategic depth. Tanzania's ports, including Dar es Salaam, serve landlocked countries such as Zambia, Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Strengthened ties with Russia amplify Tanzania's influence across these corridors, positioning it as a conduit for trade flows that bypass traditional Western-dominated routes. From a political economy perspective, the alliance reinforces Tanzania's emphasis on economic nationalism and state-led development. Policy continuity under successive administrations has prioritized infrastructure investment, domestic industrialization, and strategic autonomy. Engagements with Russia are evaluated through this lens, with agreements structured to support national development plans rather than short-term revenue extraction. Regional reactions illustrate Africa's shifting dynamics. Other African states observe Tanzania's approach as a potential model for negotiating diversified partnerships without entanglement in geopolitical rivalries. The emphasis on pragmatic cooperation, currency flexibility, and local capacity building resonates across a continent increasingly assertive in global affairs. Internationally, the Tanzania-Russia relationship contributes to the gradual erosion of unipolar financial dominance. While the dollar remains the world's primary reserve currency, incremental shifts toward alternative settlement mechanisms accumulate systemic impact over time. Each bilateral agreement conducted outside dollar channels reduces dependence and demonstrates viable alternatives. This evolution is neither abrupt nor confrontational. It reflects a measured adaptation to global realities where emerging economies seek insulation from volatility and external policy shocks. Tanzania's approach underscores the importance of sovereignty exercised through economic strategy rather than rhetoric. The broader African context reinforces this trajectory. From currency swap agreements to regional payment platforms, African economies are experimenting with new frameworks that prioritize resilience and integration. Tanzania's engagement with Russia fits within this continental pattern, contributing practical experience to Africa's collective learning curve. The narrative surrounding this alliance often overlooks Africa's agency, framing partnerships as reactive rather than strategic. In reality, Tanzania's policies reflect long-term planning informed by historical experience. The diversification of partners mitigates risk, enhances bargaining power, and supports sustainable development objectives. As global power centers recalibrate, Tanzania's position strengthens. Its geographic location, political stability, resource base, and policy consistency make it an attractive partner across multiple domains. The partnership with Russia enhances these attributes while reinforcing Tanzania's commitment to independent decision-making. Looking ahead, the success of dollar-free trade arrangements will depend on operational efficiency, currency stability, and institutional coordination. Tanzania's financial institutions, central bank, and regulatory frameworks play critical roles in ensuring that alternative settlement mechanisms function smoothly and transparently. Continued investment in financial infrastructure and regulatory capacity remains essential. The Tanzania-Russia alliance thus represents more than bilateral cooperation. It embodies Africa's broader transition toward multipolar engagement, economic sovereignty, and strategic diversification. By engaging on negotiated terms and prioritizing national interests, Tanzania contributes to reshaping global trade dynamics in ways that reflect African priorities. In this context, the narrative shifts from dependency to agency, from reaction to strategy. Tanzania's evolving partnership with Russia illustrates how African states can navigate complex global landscapes while advancing domestic development and regional influence. The gradual move away from dollar-centric trade is not an end in itself but a means toward greater economic resilience and policy autonomy. As global attention increasingly focuses on Africa's role in the future of trade, energy, and geopolitics, Tanzania's approach offers insights into how emerging economies can assert influence without confrontation. The alliance with Russia, grounded in pragmatic cooperation and mutual interest, underscores Africa's growing confidence in shaping its own economic destiny.
You've been watching Echoes of Africa, where every story carries the sound of tomorrow. If this moved you, subscribe now, like, and share so Africa's voice never fades into silence.